The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, on Thursday said the country's gross domestic product declined by 0.25% in the third quarter of 2025 compared to the second quarter. Mr. Cardoso explained that although Nigeria's GDP expanded by 3.98% in Q3 of 2025, a growth higher than the 3.86% recorded in the same quarter of 2024, but noted that the figure fell below the 4.23% recorded in Q2 of 2025. Now, this he disclosed during the second half 2025 statutory briefing before the Senate Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, chaired by Lagos East Senator Adetokunbo Abiru. Now, Mr. Cardoso attributed the growth recorded in Q3 of 2025 in relation to the Q3 2024 to increased activities in crop production, ICT, real estate, and the financial and insurance sectors. Now, he added that the key contributors to the broad-based growth includes crop production, ICT, real estate, and financials and insurance space. Now, my guest is Mr. Opeyemi Agbaje. Now, he is the chairman of the National Pension Commission, and that's PenCom. I must first congratulate him for that. Good afternoon, Mr. Agbaje, and thank you so much for starting the week with us on Business Nigeria.
Thank you very much. It's
and
my pleasure.
Congratulations, let me say that, on your confirmation of your appointment by the Senate.
Yes.
Finally.
Yes, finally.
Yes. What should we be expecting? I think a lot would happen. A lot of work is going on in PenCom, I know, but what more should we be looking at moving forward?
Well, I mean, like you said, a lot has happened in PenCom. And I think that the potential impact of many of the reforms that have happened in the sector have not been adequately discussed in the media.
Yes.
So, for instance, and we must, I think all that is happening in the pension space represents PenCom turning the vision of President Tinubu into policies, into guidelines, into things, rules for the sector to operate. So the connection must be made with President Tinubu's wider reform agenda. We talk only about the big ones.
Yes.
Fuel subsidy, exchange rate, but a lot is going on at the next tier, and PenCom represents one of that. So, for instance, I'm totally excited about the potential of the opening of wider allocations to infrastructure, to real estate, private equity, agriculture, in the PenCom guidelines. Those things have the impact. Just imagine over the next 4, 5, 10 years, the volume of funds flowing into infrastructure, ensuring that we don't have to borrow every time we want to do infrastructure, and ensuring that the private sector investment community can turn our pensions funds into an instrument of national development. In line with the vision of President Tinubu. The other one that excites me is the prospect. I mean, and it's challenging, but PenCom has a new personal pension plan that can take the informal sector into regular savings, into pensions. So that all of these informal sector people who are unprotected, who are vulnerable to financial setbacks, who have no pensions, if the efforts succeed, can be drawn into the pension system. So these are things I find very revolutionary. Indeed, there is something else that I know that, but I won't discuss that in detail because it's not yet out, but the potential for pensions to become a catalyst for health insurance as well. So those are all revolutionary ideas that are coming from the vision of the president and from the creativity of the management and staff in PenCom. Now, there's one development, though, that worries me that I think could affect the the potential benefits of. And that's the legislation I hear is making its way through the National Assembly that may essentially remove the police from the contributory pension scheme. Like I said, I sympathize with the police. They do, and they must have legitimate concerns. The question is, I've asked myself, why do people view going back to a defined benefit scheme in which pensions are paid from budgets which we know are grossly insufficient even for police operations, not to talk of for the pensions that then, and I recall what we used to see on the streets of Abuja when we were operating this defined benefit scheme, which essentially means that there is no provision for any budget, for any pension. You go there and you hope to get your pensions included in the federal budget. So those are things that worry me, not just because I hear that from the figures I've seen from the commission, the amounts of funds that you may have to sell out if you had to refund all the police pensions would be significant, and it would amount to a market disturbing event if we had to do that, and may precipitate challenges for the system. The other point is the precedent is set. After you exit the police, everybody else who wears uniforms will want to exit. That means a lot of people, customs, that means maybe even all of those Ministry of Internal Affairs agencies, quite a lot of them would have a claim, civil defense, all of that, immigration, and potentially unraveling the contributory pension system. So that's the trend I consider not too positive, and I hope that we can have conversations to arrest. But in terms of all the reforms and the vision of the president for a pension system, I didn't mention the idea of the minimum pension or making pensions adequate for the poorest and the most vulnerable of our pensioners. That's also something that the president has put his money where his mouth is, to the tune of over 750 billion naira funding to enable PenCom and other pension-related agencies meet a certain minimum so that our pensioners whose pensions have been eroded by inflation and devaluation can get a living wage. So there is a lot that is positive, overwhelmingly, that has happened under the president's leadership and vision that PenCom as an institution has turned into reality. And there will be a lot more, but I'm concerned about the prospect of a police exit.
Interesting. So a lot of work cut out for you then, I must say. Let's look at our economy.
Yes.
It's been a while. Let's do a review. It's few weeks to the end of the year. We saw the last GDP figures, and the CBN governor even talked about it, not as some say, well, it was okay. Some say we expected something above 4%.
Yeah.
So let me ask maybe your overview.
Yes.
Figures and
So
the
in terms of
performance.
3.98 that we got in Q3,
yes.
I must confess I was also hoping for at least something above 4. We had done 4.23 in Q2.
Yes.
We had come from 3.3 in Q1. So I was hoping the trajectory, but 3.98 is 4.
Approximately.
It's approximately 4. 3.98, that's 0.02
yes.
short of 4.
Yes.
So it's still at the same level. All of this is still positive. What would happen in Q4? Typically higher GDP than earlier sectors, some bullishness, close the year on an aggressive, both the corporates, households, and even government will want to do more in the last quarter of the year. So if we do somewhere around 4, maybe around 4.235, 4 point whatever, we would close 2025 GDP around 4%, very close to 4, either above it or just below it. That would be progress. You must recall that I've always been optimistic about the future. It's been a tough year, but it's been the year that our turnaround began. I mean, and you have all the figures. Reserves you were talking about in your opener, over $46 billion.
It's never been like that.
Yeah. If we get to next year, you can imagine us crossing $50 billion in foreign reserves. That's a signal to the global community, to the market. GDP averaging 4. We think that 2026, if we do 4 this year, we may do 4.5 or maybe even closer to 5 next year. We are anticipating somewhere around 4.5 GDP next year. All the indices are looking good. Sectors are doing okay. Exports, trade surpluses, capital importation, all of the indices turned around in 2025. FX stability, inflation 16%, 16.05. So we have to celebrate what has happened in 2025. And all things being equal, we have to expect that we'll continue that trend in 2026. The biggest challenges, the downside scenarios I see appear tied, as you may expect, to politics, political risk, and insecurity. And we had all of the challenges also in 2025, country of particular concern, the challenges, the international, the US Congress conversations in Nigeria, and the reality of increased kidnapping and all of that.
It is a reality.
So we need to, I mean, and everybody has been impressed with the actions taken by His Excellency. Changing the leadership of the forces, changing the leadership of the Ministry of Defense, appointing someone that has enjoyed exceptional consensus and support from across parties and groups, the General Musa at the Ministry of Defense. So again, that challenge that became a big source of risk in the minds of the people has been somewhat lowered, and we can hope that we continue to de-emphasize and degrade the extent of risk that political risk and insecurity offer. All things being equal, if we're able to contain that, it's evident that you can project that 2026 will be a better year.
Indeed, you took that, because I'm concerned about insecurity, the messages sent to investors, Nigeria being on the news for some of this, but like you talked about now, you said government is doing a lot, and we see that president is really standing up to face this. But my next question really would be back again to that GDP report. The level of, is our economy really diversified when you break down that report? You know, we keep talking about diversifying our economy, diversifying our economy. And to me, I just see that really, do you think in your breakdown and your understanding of that report, a services sector didn't actually, you know, perform as well as it used to? And, you know, some other sectors did pretty well. In your breakdown, what do you make of those sectors? So
I have always held the view from at least the Basin report of 2014-15,
yes,
Nigeria has, if you look at GDP, the structure of production in Nigeria is very diversified. Look at our top 10 sectors. Crop production 23.06, trade 16.42, real estate 13.36, telecoms and information 7.67, livestock 6.18, construction 3.8, crude petroleum. If you look at GDP, there is no debate. We have a very diversified economy. And when you have conversations about diversification of the Nigeria, there's a confusion there around. Every time somebody talks about diversification, it's confusing production, GDP, which is very well diversified, as we can see, with how government gets its revenue and how what Nigeria exports. So how does Nigerian government get its revenue? There can be a conversation about that not being very diversified. Even that is increasingly improving, but obviously we got too much of our revenue, 75% perhaps, from oil.
From oil.
So that was not diversified.
Yes.
But in terms of production, what the country produces is GDP, output, what we do as an economy. As we can see, this is extremely diversified. But when it comes to government revenue, there's a concentration on oil, which is why changing our economy, diversifying our government revenue into taxation, which is more sustainable, is a policy objective. And it's so we have to diversify or continue to diversify our government revenue, which is, like I mentioned, taxation is growing. All of those non-oil revenues are growing, but not yet large enough. They should be dominant. Our objective should be to get oil to be the minority and taxation and other sources of government revenue to be the majority. That is one area of lack of diversification. The other area, for me, the most critical one, is in terms of exports. We used to have as much as over 90% of our exports revenue come from oil. We need to continue to diversify that. We are nowhere near ideal. But non-oil exports are rising, and agri commodities as a share of exports revenue are rising, but we still need a lot of work in that. And so if you look at all these diversified sectors that when we talk about GDP, we say they are diversified, ask yourself how many of them export their production. And that shows that we are not. So our diversification challenge, which, like I said, I've maintained for at least a decade, our diversification challenge is with our government revenue and with our exports. It is not with what we produce in Nigeria. What we produce in Nigeria is extremely diversified. Like we saw, the top 10 sectors are crop production, trade, all of them are very diverse. Real estate is now the third largest economic sector in the country. To my surprise, in this quarter's GDP, crop production is 23.06. If we separate crop production from livestock, which it is useful to separate, as MBS did in this quarter, you see that livestock is 6%, 6.18, and crop production is 23.06. Also showing, even within the agriculture that we had lumped together, also showing significant diversification. So crop production 6%, crop production 23.06, livestock 6.18. So our GDP, I consider very well diversified. In conclusion.
Now you've touched on it again, tax, and we expect that. We've seen what's going on social media and everywhere. This is not the best time. I can imagine what Mr. Yedele will be going through. Always trying to explain and explain and explain.
I must commend his
yes, honestly.
Patience.
Because people come out with the kind of narrative they just want you to take home. So I want to ask you, you've already mentioned, it's a year to an election. Some say Nigerians have, just getting back after the economic reforms. Government should maybe hold on. But I think President Tinubu is just going ahead. Because even the implementation...
And I support him going ahead, quite frankly.
What do you think about the implementation?
Okay, so I do recognize that government has to be very pragmatic with the implementation. there's a bit of it that I have confirmed on this program previously.
Yeah.
That they want that provision relating to a tax on fuel.
Yes.
That we may defer that.
No, I think that one is hard.
I
said that too. Yeah, you did.
That.
You did.
But I think that there is never a good time. Our people don't like taxation. They have not built a culture of paying taxes, and they are mortified at the prospect of it happening. It is clear that the issue of capital gains tax, and I'm happy that the Minister of Finance
was able to,
has already said we may look at that again.
Yeah.
And I think that is the other area where, especially if it's going to affect foreign investment in Nigeria, if it's going to deflate investor earnings as much as it's been projected to, that may also be another area. But broadly, I would like to see implementation of these reforms come in. The new structure of VAT, the new structure of personal income tax, the new structure of corporate income tax, all of those things. I think I do not underrate the challenges of seamless implementation. I hope that on January 5 or whenever, you won't just see confusion over the whole place over taxation. And I recall listening to a respected old man who reminded us that in our history, particularly in Yoruba land, that there is a history of public agitation being tied to taxation. And so I recognize that the implementation must be careful, must be pragmatic. I know that there's a committee headed by, I think it was Joe Tegbe.
Yes, Tegbe.
Who is running that. I think he's a professional. I know him. But I do not underestimate the challenges of careful, robust implementation. And I do not think government underestimates it either.
Honestly, sir, I feel like we could just continue this. What time is never, it's almost half 2 already. Maybe in 1 minute, what more do you think you would like to maybe looking at 2026?
Well, I see that I preempted you on security. And for me, I don't think that I downplay the risks.
No.
You know,
I get the point.
I draw scenarios, and I have a very optimistic Nigeria scenario. And I'm a fan of that very optimistic Nigeria scenario. I'm an advocate of it for long, not because I'm chairman of PenCom, but I've always, from the day those reforms were announced, I've always said yes. We now have somebody with the courage to transform Nigeria's economy. So, and I've also always recognized that the downside scenarios, if Nigeria doesn't go right, it will be because of politics, insecurity, and social issues like not managing poverty and those things. Those are the things that can fuel disorder, and that political risk can then accentuate. And I think that the events of the last few weeks demonstrate that government fully recognizes the risk. The matter has become internationalized, unfortunately, but we can also leverage that to the advantage of the country.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kwame Agbaje is Chairman PenCom and also CEO RTC Advisory.
Don't forget that's my primary job.
Services Limited. Thank you for starting the week with us. We appreciate this. Thank you so much. And I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year in advance. It's close already. Yes.
And a Happy New Year to our viewers.
Yes.
And
Thank
to
you.
you too.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Well,